So, here's this week's feature game: Gizelharts Chosen versus Smrodyle Tricity.
I was there. We're from Gizelharts Chosen. We won out randomly. Thought, why not? I give it a go. Deck I'm using is Estolos, the Steward of Heaven. It's my first deck I ever pulled, second deck I ever played with. I just love the fact it's got huge ball control. It is highly capture and highly aggressive. That's about it, really. I have not. So I like going into it just for fun. I looked at it briefly for about 5 minutes, about an hour ago. I saw it was a fighty deck with not much board wipe, so I feel that my deck should do alright. No, I just hope it's a good fight, really, because we've both got quite fighty decks. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is that triple
Gary
heat.
Garnowski, and I play for Smrodyle at Tricity. We are from northern Poland. We are mostly from Gdańsk, but it's like we call it Tricity because it's like made from 3 cities like next to each other. And we are the only team from our players right now. We got some success before during the Keyforge Online team event, but this weren't us actually. We got the name because we are the first Smrodyle and the only one. Because like all other players are tired of playing online, so we are the only one remaining. And I play with my brother and one of our colleagues, which one is mostly the judge, knowing the best rulings, and all updates during our tournaments, local store tournaments. And like just about me and our team. We are surprised that we will be featured with our games because we are the great losers of Group Mars. And I didn't expect actually that this matchup's gonna be so hard. I suppose that if we choose decks for the tournament, we still think about decks playing good with strong decks, and surprisingly the meta of the game, I suppose, changes when the decks are even in SAS and the game is completely different. I've played 2 games, and like I was playing a lot of lately, but I'm trying to prepare myself for Can Touch this event, and I'm playing different decks. So this matchup for this game, I played only twice, and I lost once, and I won once, and it's gonna be really hard because my opponent has the table. He got like 24 creatures or something like that. There's like full deck full of creatures with armors, strong creatures. I really don't have many opportunities to destroy them, so they are staying in the table. I can only be quicker, faster, and rusher, and I'll try to do it. I'll try to do my best. For my opponent, I don't know. I wish him good.
When to cut. Okay. Hi, this is Karen from the Final Swindle, and I am joined by
Woody, also from the Final Swindle.
Woo. Yeah, we've been invited by KOTE for this week to do a little bit of deck analysis. So we're looking at the decks from Smrodyle Tricity versus Gizelharts Chosen. Woody will be taking the Smrodyle decks, and I'll be taking the Gizelharts decks. We're going to do a simple kind of like 3-point thing for each matchup. So the first, we're going to talk about the virtues for each specific decks. So I'll have the decks on the right for Gizelharts, and again, Woody will have the decks on the left for Smrodyle. So we'll talk about the individual decks' virtues, And then we will talk from our perspective as if we were playing the deck, what the match specific pluses and minuses are. And then third, we'll have like our kind of prediction of the outcome in a more kind of like one back and forth discussion. So Woody, I'll let you start with the virtues of this deck on a first read.
Sure. So this is the Baroness, I believe.
Oh yeah. So I do have we pulled up the translations to at least kind of know so we have Wealthy Cassia of the Baronies. I cannot say it in Polish, unfortunately, but we are trying to at least give you an idea of like the personality of the deck.
Right. I always love hearing Keyforge deck names in other languages, because when they translate, it's like, yeah, that's a Keyforge deck name, like Wealthy Baroness, sure. So this deck is really interesting, and like the first thing that my eyes go to is the Untamed house, obviously, because it's got some good sort of recursion with the double regrowths. It's got the key charge, Grasping Vines, which like low key can get you out of some tough areas. Obviously Flaxia, Mermook, Hunting Witch, these are great cards to have to just generate amber and all that good stuff. So I think like overall it's going to have pretty solid amber generation, obviously with the Shadows house helping with bait and switch, Relentless Whispers, and then the Speed Sigil, which in this matchup, I don't know if you play it, but maybe if you really want to sort of put the pressure on. We'll talk more obviously about matchup specific stuff, but Speed Sigil is just a fantastic card. And in this deck, things coming in ready is going to be awesome, especially with the Mars house, things like Grabber Jammer coming in ready, capturing one right away. Things like Mind Warper coming in ready, like that's just going to be phenomenal.
The John Smith.
Yeah, John Smith. Yeah, exactly. You start to do some readying with John Smith and stuff like that. Yeah, and so that's a great card, like no matter the matchup, I think. But maybe recently we've seen matchups where playing the Speed Sigil is like can sort of be dangerous. But I think this deck low key really wants to build up a board. It seems to have some pretty great creatures, like especially in the Mars, the Shadow with the Shadow Self, and you can start to protect things like the Hunting Witch. That seems pretty important. Obviously Dodger and Nexus, just good cards for building a board. Nexus can also, like Grasping Vines, can get you out of a tough spot if you can use an opponent's artifact. Now Imperial Trader, and again we're going to talk about specific, I know matchup specific things in a moment, but Imperial Trader could be quite nice in this matchup if you can take a doorstep or something out of their hand. But the Nerve Blast, Relentless Whispers, I mean, obviously just great steely cards. Now Ammonia Clouds in the Mars, maybe not best, given the rest of this deck wants to build a board, but I really like Ammonia Clouds generally, just being able to do that much damage. It's usually pretty fantastic. So I really like this deck. I think it wants to board. I think it wants to steal. I think it wants to do a key charge play. That seems to me to be the big things.
Yeah. And just looking at it, I think, we traditionally think about board as like massive creatures, like the deck that I got. But this deck has really sticky creatures, right? It's like it'll put down the Hunting Witch next to a Shadow Self, and then you can kill it, but it'll just regrowth it and put it back on the board. Like, so it's got, like you said, that recursion. It's using stuff right away. The Tunks are pretty big. They're always surprisingly big creatures.
Yes.
And when you look at like the effective power on DOK, they always have this like massive score because they heal themselves. So yeah, I think that also the shadow stuff being like elusive, like I think that there's a lot to kind of like in terms of the permanence of the board, in addition to just the crazy amber generation, right?
Yeah, and it's like you said, we think of like maybe bigger creatures, but it does also have a Chuff Ape, which is like kind of, if you're playing a longer game, that's a big creature to deal with.
No, it is. Yeah, it's like
stuff, and Dodger as well, right? Like once you start to get with creatures that have like 5 or above power, yeah, it's like you said, the board's going to be sticky for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'll go to mine. That is interesting. I mean, you can always keep talking about a deck. But I mean, we're talking about a board deck. Now, this is a board deck, right?
Yeah.
Istio, the Steward of Heaven. And the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is that you have double Virulent.
Sorry, Brett's asked me to try and fix it. I misunderstood what the problem
Yeah,
was.
we're from Gizelharts Chosen.
So 1 second, everyone. We will just jump back to where we were, and we will then
The individual deck's virtues, and then we will talk from our perspective as we were playing the deck, what the match-specific pluses and minuses are, and then third, we'll have like our kind of prediction of the outcome in a more kind of like one.
And in this deck, things coming in ready is going to be awesome, especially with the Mars House, things like Grabber Jammer coming in ready, capturing one right away. Things like Mind Warper coming in ready, like that's just going to be phenomenal.
The John Smith.
John Smith, yeah, exactly. You start to do some readying with John Smith and stuff like that. And so that's a great card, like no matter the matchup, I think. But maybe recently we've seen matchups where playing the Speed Sigil is like can sort of be dangerous. But I think this deck low-key really wants to build up a board. It seems to have some pretty great creatures, like especially in the Mars, the Shadow with the Shadow Self, and you can start to protect things like the Hunting Witch. That seems pretty important. Obviously, Dodger and Nexus, just good cards for building a board. Nexus can also, like Grasping Vines, can get you out of a tough spot if you can use an opponent's artifact. Now, Imperial Trader, and again, we're going to talk about specific. I know matchup-specific things in a moment, but Imperial Trader could be quite nice in this matchup if you can take a Doorstep or something out of their hand. But the Nerve Blast, Relentless Whispers, I mean, obviously just great steely cards. Now, Ammonia Clouds in the Mars, maybe not best, given the rest of this deck wants to build a board, but I really like Ammonia Clouds generally, just being able to do that much damage. It's usually pretty fantastic. So I really like this deck. I think it wants to board. I think it wants to steal. I think it wants to do a key charge play. That seems to me to be the big things.
Yeah. And just looking at it, I think, we traditionally think about board as like massive creatures, like the deck that I got. But this deck has really sticky creatures, right? It's like it'll put down the Hunting Witch next to a Shadow Self, and then you can kill it, but it'll just regrowth it and put it back on the board. Like, so it's got, like you said, that recursion. It's using stuff right away. The Tunks are pretty big, they're always surprisingly big creatures.
Yes.
And when you look at like the effective power on DOK, they always have this like massive score because they heal themselves. So yeah, I think that the also the shadow stuff being like elusive, like I think that there's a lot to kind of like in terms of the permanence of the board, in addition to just the crazy Amber generation, right?
Yeah, and it's like you said, we think of like maybe bigger creatures, but it does also have a Chuff Ape, which is like kind of, if you're playing a longer game, that's a big creature to deal with.
No, it is. Yeah, it's like.
And Dodger as well, right? Like once you start to get with creatures that have like 5 or above power, it's like you said, the board's going to be sticky for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'll go to mine. That is interesting. I mean, you can always keep talking about a deck. But I mean, we're talking about a board deck now. This is a board deck, right? Istio, the Steward of Heaven, and the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is that you have double Relentless Assault. But the cool combo that this deck can do, right, is because it's got the Coward's End. What it's actually going to do, it can clear your board and then use their Relentless Assault for reaping. Or it can use one Relentless Assault to kind of damage its stuff while fighting and then just clear the board of the rest, use the other one to reap. Obviously, Gengar Chieftain is going to come in ready. Rock Hurling Giant is a massively underrated card in my view. Doing 4 in targeted damage, especially not in this matchup, but just bringing it to a game in which you could encounter any set. It's so good against Mass Mutation to be able to just say 4 here, 4 there, and just knock out anything. So the Sanctum is going to complement that Grobnar just massively. I mean, you have the Martyr, so anything that dies is going to give you advantage. when that dies, it'll give you advantage. It has Ezekiel to ready and fight, so it's got multiple like ready and fight triggers, which is really interesting. And then it's got a gatekeeper and the doorstep to heaven, so you're kind of dominating board, and then you have kind of multiple ways to kind of have a little bit of an amber out. And then the Untamed is looking a little bit similar to the deck that we just looked at, except for it's kind of more creature control reliant, right? With that double Lost in the Woods. You've got the key cheat, you've got the Nocturnal Maneuver to exhaust everything. So, I mean, if you think about this deck in aggregate, right, the whole thing wants to fight with the triple Snufflegator. It's got the Brobnar and the Sanctum. It really, really just kind of wants to dominate boards. It can Lost in the Woods away some really inconvenient stuff. It's really just kind of a very cohesive unit of a deck. The Amber control is rather limited, so you're looking to get advantage through kind of just like straight up board domination. So kind of transitioning that into our second bullet point here, matchup specifics. What's really interesting here is you have something that can dominate board versus a very sticky board. And it seems like my deck here, like Astios, is going to be kind of trying to do its thing, and you're going to be constantly resisting that. And I feel like it'll come down to how timely that key charge is in a certain way. You have any thoughts about the way you might see this play out?
You know, it's interesting. Like I think you're totally right. It's like if there were ever a deck that a sticky board wouldn't want to run into, it's triple Murmook with like a massive Sanctum house as far as creatures, plus a Brobnar house with Ganger Chieftain, Rock Hurling Giant, Earth Shaker, like stuff that's just going to do a bunch of removal on the turn that they're played. Plus, like you said, the Relentless Assault if they get those out, and they're able to stick to the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's funny because we both talk a lot about the board, but like I think as far as Amber, which is like the name of the game at the end of the day,
Right.
I think the Baroness has a little bit of an advantage. It's going to be able to control Amber a lot better and probably generate it more quickly, possibly.
Yeah, the E is definitely better in that deck.
Right.
I mean, and DOK might say something better, but I'm not really worried about that like evaluation. You have the Hunting Witch and the John Smith plays with the Sigil. So something you mentioned earlier, and I'll let you kind of tackle it first, is Speed Sigil. Play or don't play?
I mean, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I want to feed those creatures in your deck that ability, especially because it already has so many good creatures and, like you said, so many like play fight abilities. I don't know. If I have the advantage already, I play it and kind of, you know, put the pressure on. But I certainly wouldn't want to give the Snufflegators the ability to come in ready, or even the Dew Fairy. You know what I mean? Little things like that. Like,
yeah, no, that would be a big issue. Yeah, so I mean, it seems to be game dependent, and what we haven't talked about yet is, of course, like both of these decks are basically 0 speed. You have the Squawker in your deck, which gets a little bit of a quick reap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like tempo negation in my deck. With the double Lost in the Woods, and you know, just something like a Doorstep can be a lot, but I think overall your Amber control is going to be better, my board control is going to be better. So if you can get kind of any semblance of an Amber lead, like let's just say you luck into a really good opening Mars hand, or a really good like Untamed hand to open, but really like that Mars early, if you were just kind of cycling like a John Smith with a Sigil and just moving all that stuff around, like you could just get out to a lead that I can't really counter.
Right. Because besides the Doorstep, I don't know if there's anything else that I'm afraid of if I'm checking it like 6, you know, which is
right. And then in terms of, so I guess like, you know, this logically follows into the kind of prediction of an outcome that we wanted to get to. And I have to think, as far as a win condition, But the win condition of the Baroness's deck, the Wealthy Cassia deck, there we go, is that it would essentially jump out to some kind of like unnegatable like Amber lead, right? Or like key charge a key right at the end. But it seems like we're talking about more high roll type scenarios with the hands. Like, it's not that it's not great, but it looks like you kind of, if you were to get a good hand, you could kind of jump on it. Whereas I feel like Istios actually has the inevitability in this matchup where it's like, I'm going to board probably. I don't think that there's too many ways for you to stop me from boarding. I'm going to be able to Lost in the Woods away the Shadow Self and like the Dodger, or the John Smith, like some of the more inconvenient stuff. So like I'm going to zap that off the board. And we're both moving at the same speed, so you're not going to be able to outspeed me. So I think I have the edge up, but again, that little, like the loss of Amber control kind of scares me. How do you feel?
You know, it's interesting. I think, you know, if you told me I could play one of these decks against the other, I would probably take Istios. But, and maybe this isn't right, but I just think that I think that the Wealthy Baroness deck like doesn't really care about your board, almost. I think it's gonna. I think it is just gonna generate Amber more quickly.
Right.
And I think I think the regrowths are gonna come in big. And yeah, you're gonna Lost in the Woods away some stuff, but like, and speed. You know, speed on DOK will read as 0, but I think that with the Wealthy Baroness, you can just kind of play the cards that are in your hand. I think Istios, you kind of sit around and wait for stuff, and like, when do I play Coward's End? When do I do this, that, and the other thing? When do I, you're sitting on a doorstep, kind of,
right?
All those cards.
Yeah,
but
you really can't discard the doorstep in this matchup.
No, you definitely cannot.
I think that I will inevitably board, and I think once I board, I'm checking via Reaping because one of the big things that we didn't discuss is like neither deck has a board clear. To my knowledge. Coward's End. Yeah, no, I have the Coward's End, right? So like,
I don't know if that ends up getting played. I mean, because again, if that deck has the pressure and is building a board, and all I've got is an Ammonia Clouds that is admittedly not going to do a ton. I don't know if.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Is like Istios has the.
I feel like it's too slow. Like, I would kill for some printed Amber in that deck. Really.
No, it's true, but I just feel like the inevitability of the board really nabs you. But I could totally see you, like, especially on a high roll, I could definitely see losing it because of just the sheer amount of Amber and the regrowths and just the stickiness of the board. But I suppose moving on to the blue matchup, so just to get a real clear thing for the audience, though, like, I definitely think Istios would have this matchup. Where do you land?
I think the Wealthy Baroness comes out on top, and maybe I'm just a homer, a bias, but
right. All right.
You know what we can do is we can look up and see who won these games at the end, because they've already played.
Yep, and we're back. So thank you to the Swindle for doing that great deck analysis. They came in at short notice to fill in a hole, and unfortunately,
standard turn one play from KOTE drops a Phylaxia. Very nicely done.
Let's see what else we've got.
Nice Gega Chieftain, nothing to release it, but Mamook and Dewfairy forces the answer. Nice Imperial Traitor, Protect Tricks. Gets rid of champion, it wants to be able to have that Mamook and Dewfairy in the line. Gets rid of Bad Penny. Putting the Silent Dagger on the Phylaxia, telegraphing that the next turn is going to be going into Untamed. Also means that it can play on the Coward's End, which is a big part for removal. Reap, fights into the Shell Self, very interesting. And Reaps with the Dewfairy. Grasping Vines just for the Amber. Reaps with Phylaxia, gets rid of the Dewfairy. So we'll be paying extra for this key, it appears, but Dewfairy can get quite powerful early on. Snufflegator with Away the Bear, giving Assault 2, And there's the speed sigil with Dodger and a bait and switch. Very powerful turn coming up from it. Next turn.
I've never
Next
seen
turn.
so many Snufflegators in the same place before.
And there's the yellow key on turn 4. I mean, you went to the GC, so you saw the Sheffield Snufflegators. I like this play. The fight from Phylaxia to be able to regrowth and replay Phylaxia. Getting very far. We see Chuff Ape in hand with a tongue, but we're probably not going to see it come down. Interesting play here. Discards counter and uses Gang Chieftain, gets rid of the Snufflegator, which has got the assault. Ghost Shadows. Do you play Dodger or do you play Nexus? Because you can use Nexus to use the cannon, but goes for Dodger to get rid of Snufflegator, to then steal one, getting up to 5. And you hold the bait and switch because you know you're going to be foraging soon. Doorstep is a liability here. Plays Protectrix. Francis reaps for the Protectrix there. We saw this last week. Goes for the heal on Francis, but unfortunately that doesn't work. Should have fought first and then healed Francis with the Protectrix.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot.
You hate that. Shield of Justice, Stir with the Martyr, and Doorstep in hand, so we are going to see Tunk come down, probably get the Amber back from Francis. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to see Tunk come down, Chuff Ape come down, Grabber Jam come down, which is all going to go for the heals. Chuff Ape, 11 power, comes in stunned. Fight, Reap, you make sacrifice another creature to fully heal Chuff Ape. It is a beast of a creature if you can keep it on long enough.
Chuffake is a fun one, but you say I've never seen it last. But in this hand, this deck, maybe it will.
No, you can see the fights coming in now.
Yeah, there we go.
8 damage, a little bit more. No, going for the Tunks.
I mean,
Chuff Ape actually surviving, and we see a John Smith in hand, so we could see a Mars turn into John Smith, and the Chuff Ape coming in to do some extra damage.
well,
Loosener.
John Smith's not a player any fight or reap, so it won't be straight away.
It will because of Speed Sigil.
Oh, of course, Felicia, sorry. Changes everything.
Fights Protectrix, brings it in. John Smith comes in ready, fights Speed Sigil. Mulligan comes down, Reap for John Smith, and you could ready the Chuff Ape to Reap and then sack Phylaxia. Nope, goes for the Tunk and gets rid of Grey Monk. Not a bad move, not a bad move at all.
Makes sense. This is not the style of game I'm used to seeing at all in any event, not just KOTE. I mean, this is not a bad thing. It's just different. Being so creature heavy.
Drops the Gatekeeper. I like using Gatekeeper over the Doorstep here because using Gatekeeper means that they can set up a bigger
Doorstep.
A bigger Doorstep in the future. Also gets rid of the big options, but we have got John Smith and Grabber Jammer, but this is probably the correct play here because you can go for the Reaps of Phylaxia, Lost in the Woods, get rid of the Gatekeeper, get up to 9, then Chota, get the second key, mid-turn, plays Mamook, regrowth, get back, Chuff Ape. So that really does.
Well, would you have not thought Chota into Gang Chief, then use regrowth to get Chota back into your hand, ready for a following turn?
That might have been the play when Minito thought of it, but Minito also very much highlighting what they're planning to do in their next few turns. With how bringing back the Chuff Ape rather than go for the synergy of getting the extra cards down.
But we're bait and switch there and Nerve Blast. It's going to be a Shadow's turn next, I'm fairly sure, for them.
Yeah, going up to 6 opens up that bait and switch.
Now we know.
Could have also just dropped the Grabber Jammer and would have been able to do the exact same thing. Bait switch goes up to 5. Nerve Blast 6.
Urchin 7.
Urchin 7, 8. But we know Doorstep's going to come down, and then we're going to see the Raiding Knight dropping Mini Tau down to 4. But then, and Wazlad's going to get up to 5 with the Reap. But it's just kicking dirt around the end of the game here. We've seen 2 to 4 with 4 Amber in hand. Nexus comes down, which is going to lead to a cannon play. I've kind of probably wanted to go for the Asp so I could get the Amber back off Raiding Knight. Now, here's the problem. Has got lost in the woods, but can't actually get them off check. Because if they lost in the woods the raiding night, they go to 7 and Mamook allows them to forge. If they get rid of the Mamook, they can still forge. But Wazlan is going to get a key off the key charge, which means it isn't going to be a complete wipe. Tricity are going to lose. Gizelharts Chosen are going to get a key here, and Tricity are not going to get unlimited play. We see the gatekeepers come back as well. So this could be very important. Uses Mother Gun to get rid of Mamook. If Minotaur doesn't go over 6 here, would be game, but is going to push up to at least 8 and 9 with them. So the gatekeeper's going to come down. Going to capture all down back down to 5, and then it's going to be a double reap. But we see the Ancient Man hand, so it's going to be Ancient Man comes down ready, fight into Gatekeeper, key charge, win. Plays Hunting Witch. Why would you play Hunting Witch first?
Habit.
It still works. 5, then we put the Hunting Witch, still works. There was a longer way of doing it, but there we go.
Ah, come on, it's only 1 card longer.
Bye.